Hi greedy 3Ders, another painting episode today. Today we're going to paint up this. This is the lizard by H3LLCreator, old Dr. Kurt Connors from Spiderman. I will show you how I painted him up today, especially how we made this wonderful, my favourite ever base. Stay tuned. I've printed the lizard using this uniformation resin X13 biodegradable resin, and I've printed it all on the GK3 Ultra, printed it all in one big batch. If you want to see my review for this resin, you check out one of my previous videos. I'll put a link in the description for you. I've used this resin on this printer and also the RS. This is the model we are doing today, the H3LLCreator lizard, Dr. Kurt Connors. We're going to be printing him as we've said on the GK3 Ultra. Here is the build plate. The good thing about having a big build plate like the Ultra is I can get everything including the base on one load, and about 4 or 5 hours later he has printed wonderfully. Everything's beautiful. I'm happy with the way this has come out. It's all printed in one plate as well, which makes life a little bit easier, don't it? Right, here he is. I've took it off. I've cleaned it in some IPA, I've soaked it in hot water to get the supports off, and I've cured it for about 10 minutes, 5 minutes each side, and you can see it still needs a bit of a clean up, but you get the gist. This is the quality that we've got. This is the detail that we've got for the lizard from H3LLCreator. It's looking really lovely. All the details in there, the finer points, you can see them, the scales on his skin, his tongue, everything is wonderful. I'm really happy how he's come out. I think it's really important to get a good print quality and to get some decent resin, and if you find your resin of choice and you find your quality and your settings and everything, stick to it because you just can't beat it. I'm happy with this. This was a 2.5 second exposure time on the Ultra and it's printed just wonderful. All the detail is there. Now painting wise, I've coated everything in some Army Painter matte black before moving on to some bleached bone for his lab coat, and I'm just going to give that a blast all the way across. What I am going to be happy to do is leave some of that black to shine through to look like some shadows. We'll do a bit more work on it later before we move on to the jeans. And Omega Blue is the base layer I'm going to give the jeans to. I had a few problems with my airbrush blocking here, so a little bit of frustration, a little bit of trial and error, but I managed to get a decent coat of the blue on before I took that airbrush apart, give it a bit of a clean out for the rest of the model, but this does happen on occasion. Console Blue is the next colour for the jeans, and as you can see, all I'm doing here is I'm going to give it a highlight, if you will, from the above down mostly, but I want to just give the jeans a bit of a contrast. We're going to come back with a little bit of wash on them as well, but that's the overall colour for the jeans all done. Now moving on to his skin, I'm going to use green skin. This is an Army Painter Air paint and I am going to blast it all over. Now I have diluted this with some medium because I want it to be a little bit watery, and the reason why, if you can look at the hands, look at the way that it's just looks like the green is settling into the foreground and the background looks a little bit dark. That's what I want, that kind of wet look for the scales. Same again on his legs, and I'm not giving it a blast all over, I'm just giving him a lick, if you will, of this green. I want to add some more shades to it, but this I want to settle in to that back and leave some of the black coming through, and diluting it turns it into almost a little bit of a wash. It's a bit thicker consistency than a wash, but I think you get the gist of what I'm doing. The same again with his face. I want some of the black for the ingrains in his face to come through, so that watery wash is doing the trick just wonderfully. Feral green is what I'm going to put on next, and I want to add a highlight on it. I don't want to do too much work, I don't want to ruin that work I've done, but I definitely want to contrast a lighter colour in certain areas, so I am just giving it a light dusting of this feral green in certain areas on the model. As you can see there, I'm leaving some of the black to come through because I'm going to do some dry brushing on it later, but a couple of quick splats. You can see I'm not giving it much, but look at that, look at the contrast. Tail's had a bit more work because it's a bit bigger, as you can see, and the face again, I want to give that light feral green a contrast colour over the green skin, and I am really pleased with how it's come out. It's all looking good. We need to do a bit of work inside his mouth, but the head itself is looking good. I popped everything to dry on a stand, and I'm going to give everything just a quick coat over with a bit of clear lacquer just to protect it. So now the base colours are on, we're going to go some Drakenhof Nightshade. This is like a wash, a Citadel blue, a dark blue colour. And I'm going to use this to just darken the darker areas of his jeans just a little bit. Again, so we've got the base colours on, we've got some highlights, and now we're working on the lowlights, working in the folds of where the join is around his bottom, and the fold at the back of his knee, and the joints. Everything just to give it a darker shade to add to the ambience of the piece. And there we go. That's what he looks like with all the colours on. We're going to do much more work on him with the brush, so bear with me on that. Agrax Earthshade is what I'm going to use next. And on his lab coat, on his jacket, I'm going to dirty that up a bit. It's far too clean at the moment. So I'm just using a little bit of this brown to dirty up and to make his jacket look a little bit more worn, a little bit more used. And come on, he's turned into the lizard while he's been working, wearing this, so it's not going to look prestige. It's not going to look like he's just took it out the washing machine, is it? So it's going to dirty up. So I'm going to add this brown into the inside and the outside. I'm going to do a little bit more work on it, of course, with the brush stage, but I just want to, at this stage, take away from the plainness of the white or of the pale colour that it is, and make it look aged and dirty and used. And this Agrax Earthshade is doing the job marvellously. Right, a little bit of orc flesh next, and yep, you've guessed it, another shade on the skin. I'm just going to darken that up a little bit from certain angles, from underneath really, and I think you'll agree with me, just looking at those hands and the feet and everything, the colours are beautiful. I'm so pleased with how everything's come out. I've took some Fey Pink now. Now Fey Pink I'm going to use for the inside of his mouth, and I'm going to use the airbrush as carefully as I can, because the inside of his mouth needs to have a base colour down, which I'm going to use this pink. So get that inside his mouth as best you can, avoiding the green as much as you can, and that's what he looks like. We're going to need to do a little bit of touching up around the sides, but there you go. That's the pink in, and let's get on with some of the brush work. Uniform grey now. We're going to start to work on the base. Now the base for this model is one of my favourite bases ever, and I'm starting off with, obviously it's had a black layer all over of primer, and now I'm dry brushing some of this uniform grey right the way across all the concretey rock bits of it before I take some of this rough iron. I love this paint. This I'm going to use for the pipe work, the metal work on the model. There's quite a few little bits of it, and I'm going to give it the first layer of this bronze colour, and then we're going to bring it back to life with some shading, some highlights and some rust effects. But as a base colour, I just love this bronze. It's a wonderful colour. I suggest you get hold of some of that. Taking some of this Corax white now, what I'm going to do is give it a base layer on the bottom of the base itself, because this is going to be like a green slime, like some kind of green ooze. So to get the next effect that I need on it, which is that green ooze, I need to put a base layer of white down. So I'm going to put that all the way across in all the areas that I need it to be lighter later. And I've took that white as well on a little dry brush, and I'm just going over the edges of the rocks, just highlighting the outer edges and certain aspects of it. And as you can see over the dry brushed grey, the dry brushing of the white, it just makes it look just like stone. Agrax Earthshade again, and I'm just going to use a narrow brush at first and get some of that into the nooks and crannies of the model. You could have done this with an airbrush, of course I could, but I had the brushes to hand, I had the Agrax Earthshade, so I've just painted that into the nooks and crannies around the base, as you can see there, before taking some of this Balthazar Gold. And this is the magic. What I'm going to do with this is kind of speckle it and splatter it across the bronze colour, and this will age it up. This will make it look like it's starting to go rusty. This will make it look like this metalwork has had better days. Don't be too careful, just splodge it on there. Now I could have done this with a sponge, but I've used the brush, and I think you can see at this stage already the difference that that's making to the metalwork, and I am just chuffed with that. It's looking nice. I hope you agree with me that it's looking nice. The metalwork's looking really tired. The rocks are looking like dirty old rocks. A bit more to do to them. Dirty down rust next, and I'm going to use a sponge that I'm just going to break in half to get a rough edge, dab it into the dirty down rust, get the majority off on a brush, and then dab it around the pipe. I want some of the edges of the pipe to look rusty, and this stuff is great. The longer you put it on and you leave it, and it just turns to a kind of rust effect. It's just another element, another colour, another level of detail really on the tubing, on the pipes there. And look at that. So pleased with how that's coming out. I really do recommend these colours for that kind of metalwork look. Next, I'm just going over with the white again because I put the Agrax Earth shade on. I just want to brighten it up again. So using that white from Citadel, again on a dry brush, just tidying up the edges, giving it that other layer, that extra layer of depth. And next we're going to use some streaking grime from AK, just on a big fat sponge. I've dipped it into the streaking grime, and I'm just going to dab this across certain areas. This gives it a greeny, kind of browny, kind of mossy look, like the rocks are dirty and worn and they've got little things growing on them, and that's what I want. I'm not doing the whole thing, I'm just doing it in certain areas and using some panel liner. In some of the darker lines, I'm just going to dab that on just to bring those dark lines back and add to the contrast, so that the light rocks, the ones we've dry brushed and the ones we've added the streaking grime to, just look a little bit brighter. Just adds a contrast, doesn't it? You want the black to be black and the dry brush to be dry brush. And again, I'm not going to overdo this and put it everywhere. I'm just going to do it in strategic places until my ancestors tell me to stop. Right, Tesseract Glow. This is the gold. This stuff is wonderful, and I'm going to put this onto the white now. I'm not going to be careful. I'm not going to gently do it. I'm just going to dab the bleeding life out of it. I'm going to get a brush full of the stuff, and I'm going to splodge it on. Now, this Tesseract Gold will give you a kind of greeny yellow hue. You're going to need to do a couple of layers of it, which I'll show you, but let's get that on. I've also remembered to paint the inside of the pipes white as well, and put some of this Tesseract Glow on that, otherwise it will look like you won't know where it's coming from. Now, once that's dried, and I've done that by the medium of the good lady's hairdryer, I'm just going to put another coat on. Again, don't be liberal, splodge it all over the thing until it's completely covered. Then I'm going to take some of this UV resin. This is wonderful stuff. This is what I've used for drool on aliens and stuff like that. I'm going to take some more of the Tesseract Glow, just pour it onto a little bit of foil there. Add some of this clear UV resin, so I've got a splodge of it. Take some of the paint, mix it into the resin, so that now what we've got is UV resin of that Tesseract colour. And what I'm going to then do with this, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it on the pipe, so it starts to look like the ooze, the slime is dripping out of the pipe. And to do that, I'm going to paint it on nice and thick, let it run out of the tubing, let it run out of the pipe, and then take a UV light and splat it on there. And that UV resin will now set as it's coming out of the pipe, and it will look like this stuff is just oozing out. Then I'm going to take some more of it, and I'm going to dab it just to make it look like a little bit of a splash here and there, and I'm going to pop it on the edges, use the UV light again just to get it to settle and make it look like it's running out. Same again with the other pipe. I want it to look like it's in there ready to overflow. UV light, you get the gist, don't you? This stuff is great. It's so versatile. You can use it clear to do like a slime, like drips coming out of mouths, or you can mix it with colours to do what you like with it. I'm just going to put this now straight on the top of the Tesseract green, and I'm going to move it around with a brush and splodge it and splatter it. I just want it to look like it's got lots of consistency, lots of bubbles in it, and once I've got it just how I want it and I've got it all the way over the model, I'm going to take that UV light and I am going to blast it across, and that will then solidify into place, and I'm going to leave it for about 12 hours or so just so that everything dries. That dries, the paint dries, and I think you'll agree with me that this base is looking absolutely fantastic. It is probably my favourite base ever. I just love the way that the green slime has come out, and it's took a bit of work and it's took a few layers, but I am happy with the result, and I think you will be too. That's the slime effect I was after coming out of the pipe, and you can also see all the rust on the pipe, and that's the main section of the slime. And again, I think it looks lovely. Be interested to hear what you guys think in the comments. Right, taking some blue and some white next to make a really light blue. I'm just going to dry brush across the jeans. Now, I've already done some layers with the airbrush, of course I have, but I just want certain areas of these jeans to look even more lighter, as if they would, as if he'd worn them, and the folds and the creases and the marks and the dents were lighter. So I'm just giving it a coating in certain areas all the way across before I take a more white colour, so mix some more blue in with the white, but this time it's more white than it is blue, and just go over the edges of those jeans, just where they're all ripped and torn. The folds are getting another layer as well. I'm going to take some of this dark tone army painter next, and I'm just going to dip it onto a big sponge, and I'm going to dab that across the jeans just to make the jeans look a bit dirty. If it's a bit too thick or a bit too much on there, if you've carried some of the white over, just rub it off with your fingers. I should have let it dry first, but I didn't, and this is the end results of the jeans. They're dirty, they're battered, they're used. That's just how I wanted them to look. Now his coat, obviously we've done a little bit of work with the Agrax Earthshade, but we're also going to use this dark tone on his jacket also. Using that great big sponge, I'm going to make the jacket look dirty. I'm going to make it look worn. I'm going to make it look like it's been through a lizard transformation and dragged through some dirt here and there. So just dab it on. I'm not going to overdo it. I just want to make the coat look interesting. I don't want it to be a plain old pale white colour. I want it to just, when you look at it, I want it to pop. I want it to stick out. And the rest of him is kind of green, so this white coat, this dirty coat, will really extenuate the green of his skin and his arms and his face. So just get it all over there. Using washes in this way with a sponge is a brilliant way to dirty your things up and make them look old and used and worn. And you can use this sponge technique to do all sorts of things. I used it in my previous video when I made the Space Marine, which I do urge you to go and check out, and you'll see how I use this sponge. I also use sponges like this to do skin tones, as they add some lovely effects. The secret is ripping it in half and just having that jaggedy, uneven, broken area that you're popping on. It takes away layer lines from brushes, etc., and it's a wonderful technique. We're going to go back to green skin now, and all I'm going to do is water this down just a little bit, and almost with a tiny brush, dry brush it across his face where the pink has just maybe overspilled a little bit too much into the green. And then I'm going to take some of this skeleton bone and give his teeth a layer all the way across with this skeleton bone, making sure I don't get it around the inside of his mouth. And once I've got that skeleton bone on, Blood Red, which is an Army Painter speed paint. This is version 1 speed paint, and I love the version 1 speed paint. And I'm going to paint his tongue all the way across to give that wonderful bloody red, different layer of red tongue. This speed paint is wonderful stuff. For his eyes, I'm going to give them a base layer of the skeleton bone. We're going to do a bit more work for him, but I want a light base. So skeleton bone is as good a colour as any to do that. Just making sure you keep it to the whites, I suppose, of his eyes. Before we're going to take Pallid Bone, another speed paint version 1, and I'm going to paint this all over his teeth, and straight away you will see that his teeth become yellow, his teeth become stained. He's almost got teeth of a 40-a-day smoker. They're going to look dirty, they're going to look manky, and that's exactly what we want for the lizard. This speed paint Pallid Bone is fabulous for claws and teeth and nails. If you just want to give them a little bit of character painted over skeleton bone, they look wonderful. Now for the eyes, Zealot Yellow, yes, it's a version 1 speed paint again, and all I'm going to do with the eyes is dollop it in there, and you can see straight away we get hints of orange, hints of red, hints of yellow. It just makes the eyes pop and makes them stand out, as you can see. And we'll do a little bit more to the eyes, but that's pretty much them done. Now Flesh Wash is what I'm going to use for inside his mouth, and I'm literally going to layer this in there. I can't leave his mouth pink. I want it to look different colours and shades and hues, and that's what we've got. So you can see now that the inside of his mouth has got character. The sides of his mouth have got character. It just looks, I am so pleased with how the lizard is coming out. Back to a little bit of skeleton bone now, and I'm just going to dry brush this really lightly, and I mean lightly, across certain areas of the scaly green skin of him. Little bits on his legs, little bits on his hands and his arms, and where he's got those veins that you can see there, I'm just going to hit them really lightly as well, just so they stand out a little bit. I'm not going to do too much with this. I want him to be green, but I also want this hue of skeleton bone to just poke out. I've also put quite a bit more of this skeleton bone on a sponge, and I want his hands, the back of his hands and the back of his feet, to be a different shade to the rest of him, just again to make it look interesting, to make it look like something that's a little bit different. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just giving his front of his feet a coating all over that, and I'm dabbing it on so it doesn't look even, it looks like it's random. I've done the inside of his hands as well, so now when we look at him, it just looks different. Use the skeleton bone again, but this time in its raw state. I'm going to paint all of his nails on his hands and on his feet. This is just a base colour that's going on, exactly the same as we've done the teeth, and you can probably guess what paint will be going on to them later. He's got a t-shirt on which I've just painted brown, nothing special there. I've just dry brushed it over with a little bit of skeleton bone just to lighten it up a little bit, and I've took some of this waste wash, it's basically a brown wash, that I've now covered his t-shirt in, and all I've done is I've just made his t-shirt look a little bit more interesting, a little bit more dirty, rather than just a plain old colour. Palette bone next, as I said, across all his nails to make them look manky, make them look dirty, and again just add another layer of detail. Last step now, gloss varnish all over his mouth, all over his teeth, and a small brush into his eyes, and that's the lizard done. I think let's have a look at him finished, and I hope you enjoy the end product.
In the lab he makes his case. The green scales start creeping on his face. Dr. Connor's lost the human race. Spider senses tingling in the chase. In the alleys the shadows bend. Man and beast, they start to blend. Spider-Man swoops in to defend. Friend or foe, it'll depend. Green lizard stomping through the streets. Spiderweb swing fast on repeat. Science gone wild in its feet. Hero and beast are bound to meet. Serum gone wrong takes a toll. Dr. Kurt loses self-control. In a frenzy, the lizard rolls. Spider-Man, he's got a console. Two minds.
I think it's one of my favourite models ever. I've said that before, but it's my favourite one at the moment anyway. The base, I just love the base. I love that slime effect. I love the ooze. I really hope you found something of interest in this video. I really, really do. And you can take something away from it, because that's the whole point and the reason behind me doing them. If you like what you see, leave a comment. Tell me what you think about the painting process. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? Did you like the way I did the slime? Is there a better way of doing it? I'm all about learning. Let me know what you think. If you like this little old channel, please subscribe. Press that button. It's quick, it's free, it's easy to do. Think about joining the Greedy 3D Patreon, and I want to say thank you to my wonderful patrons. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much. Please think about if you want to buy a print, if you want to buy the paint, if you want to support the channel that way, the links will be down below. I think there's a HeyGears sale on at the moment. Check it down below. You might be able to get a little bit off. They are affiliate links, so a little bit will kick back to the channel, but I hope you can save a few quid by following them. See you next time on Greedy 3D. Hope you've enjoyed this. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Catch you later.